Hello and good evening. Thank you for joining us here for your news update on KTN Prime.
Many thanks for joining us on the program. And we start with some news that have just made their way into a newsroom. Is that a fire has broken out in Nairobi's Gikomba market. At this time, we do not know how big the fire is or whether or not the firefighters are on the scene. We are keeping an eye on that story, and we shall be giving you the details as soon as we get them.
Yes, we certainly will. Right now, though, let's give you an update on the situation in Mombasa. A third suspect has been arrested following an aborted terror attack in Mombasa town. Now, Mombasa County Commissioner Nelson Marwa says the man is suspected to be the mastermind of the planned attack.
Now, this comes as the police in Mombasa discovered and disarmed 6 heavy bombs from a car, and as KTN's Ferdinand Omondi reports, this is one of the biggest preemptive actions taken against terror.
A combined force of the Kenya Police Bomb Squad, the Kenya Navy, and the FBI set out to disarm what was initially thought to be 2 pipe bombs discovered beneath the back seats of this SUV at the regional police headquarters in Mombasa. By end of day, in the car were not 2 but 6 cylinders of explosives estimated to weigh 60 kilograms.
We have found that the vehicle was actually an army barracks. It was not just a normal vehicle.
During the nerve-wracking 8 hours of disarming the vehicle, bomb experts also found an AK-47 assault rifle, 270 rounds of 7.62mm ammunition, 5 magazines, 6 hand grenades, 6 detonators, quarry cables used for detonating explosives, and a mobile phone, which police say could also have been used to detonate the bombs.
This amount of ammunition, if security agents did not move very fast to nip the bud before they executed their plan, we are sure that the destruction could have been very big.
5 pipe bombs were retrieved from beneath the 4 seats of the car, but the 6th bomb is said to be still tucked in the dashboard and may be detonated along with the car. The vehicle itself was an assembly of several vehicle parts.
The chassis does not belong to that vehicle. The engine does not belong to that vehicle. The number plate does not belong to that vehicle.
Police are holding 2 men in connection with the discovery, one a Kenyan, the other a Somali national. Abdiaziz Abdullahi Abdi and Isaac Nur Ibrahim were arrested after police intercepted suspicious communication between persons in Kenya and Somalia last week.
The communication was tracked down to somewhere in Changamwe, where we were able to locate 2 potential Al-Shabaab, you may call them Al-Qaeda.
KTN has established that the 2 were actually arraigned in court on Monday on charges of being in possession of an uncustomed motor vehicle and 1 for being in the country illegally. Translation: the car was in police custody for at least 4 days before the explosives were discovered.
It is now preemptive. We are not responding, but we have prevented a major disaster.
Kwa hivyo ni asante, tunaomba utulivu kwa watu wa Mombasa. Maka ni jambo ambalo already tumeliweza kulifanya investigation, kama vile tumeambiwa zitaendelea, tutaweza kuja tuwapatie ripoti zingine.
Police say the terrorists were targeting high fatalities to suggest the targets may have been buildings with high populations like skyscrapers or shopping malls. A security source intimated to KTN that the attack was in fact set to be carried out last Saturday. Key installations are now under tight security and police patrols heightened in the county. Police have described this discovery as a big catch, and the exhibits speak for themselves. It is a kind of preemptive action that Kenyans have long demanded, and this has actually saved hundreds of lives. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mombasa.
So, as Ferdinand Omondi just explained to us, the police have discovered 6 pipe bombs. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a pipe bomb? Let's take a look at that right now, deconstruct it for you. Well, pipe bombs are actually made of relatively easy to get components. So it's nothing very technical, nothing very fancy, basically things that you would find it rather easy to find. Another thing about the pipe bomb is that even though it's made of easy to find material, it does produce a relatively large explosion. So this is a very, very dangerous thing. And they are by nature improvised weapons. So it does take a basic amount of skill to put them together, but it's largely from bits and pieces that are being put together. They're mostly used by those who do not have proper access to military devices. So the kind of high-tech things that the military would use, this is not exactly one of those things. Also, and this is very significant, this is the very first time that pipe bombs are actually being used in Kenya. So you could say this signifies a definite progression in the kind of aggression we're seeing coming from terrorists. And that's why this attack in Mombasa is that significant, Ben.
Yes, indeed, Nancy. And in a rejoinder of that news story, in the UK, in the place called Tobamo, a young family escaped unhurt today after a pipe bomb exploded at their house. So it is something that is in use by terrorists. Now, in other news, the Court of Appeal has nullified the election of George Wanjohi as the Member of Parliament for Mathare. The court has thus ordered for fresh elections in the constituency. ODM Stephen Kariuki had appealed to overturn last year's ruling by the High Court that had upheld Wanjohi's election.
After several months of a court battle following the appeal by ODM Stephen Kariuki, finally the verdict was delivered.
In order that a fresh election for the member of the National Assembly for Mathare constituency be held as required by law.
The judge ruled that IEBC violated the law when it recalled the victory certificate it issued to ODM Stephen Kariuki after he was declared the winner. He said the returning officer had no legal mandate to cancel the certificate. After being stripped of the Mathare seat, the court further ordered TNA's George Wanjohi to pay 1.5 million shillings as litigation for both the High Court and the Court of Appeal. Bishop Margaret Wanjiru's son, Stephen Kariuki, was elated and said justice had prevailed. Meanwhile, Kariuki's team did not waste any time, and immediately after the ruling,
koti imeamua turudi kwa debe kwa sababu walikuwa wametuibia kura. Tunaandikiwa certificate, wanaenda wanabadilisha. Tunaomba IEBC wakati huu Mathare constituency wavute kila mtu kazi, watuletee watu wapya ili waweze kusimamia uchaguzi huu. That is the only way we'll have a free and fair election.
They kicked off their campaigns in Mathare. During the March 4th elections, Kariuki was declared winner with over 34,000 votes against Wanjohi's 32,000, but later IEBC asked Kariuki to surrender his victory certificate, citing unforeseen errors. Najma Ismail, KTN.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has tasked the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and also the Attorney General to formulate an anti-corruption policy by the end of the year. The president issued the directive to stem graft, and he has also instigated a massive transfer of staff at the office of the president as the war on graft is declared, the fight for the country's fourth liberation.
The war on graft picked impetus, having blessings from the country's top administration. The anti-graft body, Attorney General's Office, Treasury and the Justice Department tasked with a strict timeline to develop a policy to battle graft at the grassroots level.
This country lacks a comprehensive national anti-corruption policy. My office and the Commission are working to ensure that this policy is in place before the end of next year.
The report of their exercise should be finalized by the end of December 2014.
So monumental is the fight that is being compared to the country's many struggles. Described as a cancer eating up a big chunk of public coffers, corruption is pinpointed as the biggest impediment to socio-economic development in the country.
Kenya is now pursuing a fourth liberation, and that is the liberation from the yokes of corruption and impunity. Just like in the other wars, we can liberate ourselves. However, to achieve this, we require men and women who are prepared to stand out and say no to corruption.
No one writes down a plan to be broke or lazy or fat or stupid. These things happen to those who don't have a plan. But unless we have a plan that is going to give us the best possible chance to eliminate wastage is going to undermine our plans.
The president put government departments on notice of a graft after a state-sanctioned probe and ranking of ministries and departments. The corruption indices to be used as benchmarks to evaluate the most corrupt government institution.
The war against corruption is capable of being won and can indeed be won.
Today, for the first time, we have a clear picture of the nature and distribution of corruption in the public sphere. Our public entities have no excuse now. They must deal and deal swiftly with corruption and its attended malpractices.
As a show of intent, the state has moved nearly 100 officers in the office of the president to various government ministries. The staff drawn from the accounts and procurement departments within the office of the president. Further, a top official at the government's printer has been moved to the mining ministry as the state flexes its muscle to dismantle corruption cartels in the country.
Let me be clear on this matter, that my government simply will not tolerate corruption.
The war on corruption has been declared as the battle for the fourth liberation. Will this be translated into actions or just remain as mere lip service as in the past? Will the big fish and the small fish fry in the same pan? Samogina, KTN, Nairobi.
A tough-talking president has ordered the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, Treasury and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to formulate a policy to deal with corruption by the end of the year. And on the big question tonight, we are asking you, do you think this latest strategy will succeed in fighting graft?
Yes, will this succeed in doing what so many other efforts have failed to do? Let us know your opinion, and you can do that by tweeting us. My handle is @Kachungira. Tweet Ben @Ben_Kitili. Also add @KTN Kenya to that. And of course, we'll find out at the end of this bulletin what the poll result is and what you have to say about this story.
Now, as government talks tough on corruption, a report by the Director of Public Prosecutions reveals that at least 56 cases of corruption were reported by last December. KTN's Ashamulo digs into the archives for the major scandals that have gone unpunished here in Kenya.
Corruption in Kenya has been described in one statement: widely seen but rarely punished. For more than 3 decades, Kenyans have witnessed dozens of corruption scandals, most of which have been pushed under the rug by one regime after the other. The closing years to President Daniel Arap Moi's 24-year rule saw a trail of evidence on graft exposed. One major scandal could not be silenced. The 1990s Goldenberg scandal cost Kenyans billions of shillings. The chief architect, Kamlesh Patni, allegedly duped the government into paying him up to $600 million for subsidized gold exports that were never delivered. Patni smiled through an inquiry into the allegations. In the end, Patni negotiated a deal where he gave up his Grand Regency Hotel, which he built using the Goldenberg funds, to the central government.
I am losing Grand Regency Hotel, but gaining my peace, integrity, and chance to continue, freedom to continue development.
In one of the least reported corruption scams, the prison department paid $3 million, at least 250 million shillings, for the supply of 30 boilers. Only half of those were delivered. By 2005, the Goldenberg scandal had died down, and the next scam of the decade was exposed. Whistleblower John Githongo revealed details of the Anglo leasing scandal. Tenders were awarded to non-existent firms for the supply of a new passport printing system. The anti-graft body KACC chose to remain politically correct.
Resignation is a matter of personal conscience.
In February 2006, a Transparency International report revealed that the NARC government spent 1 billion shillings on luxury cars that were reportedly used by senior government officials. In November that year, more graft allegations were slammed on the government. This time, the state was accused of turning a blind eye to a $1.5 billion banking fraud scam involving money laundering. It claimed that 10% of Kenya's revenue was involved. In 2008, Pandora's box was opened yet again.
This motion finds that the minister has his 10 fingerprints on corruption all over the country.
Finance Minister Amos Kimunya was accused of selling the Grand Regency Hotel in a secret deal with Libyan investors. His fellow cabinet minister blew the whistle.
It is not true that this transaction was between the government of Kenya and the government of Libya.
We have concluded this transaction through an agency representing the government of Kenya, which is the Central Bank of Kenya, and an agency representing the government of Libya, who have taken over the hotel.
Hakuna mtu ambaye ametuonesha document moja ambaye imetaja jina ya Mheshimiwa Kimunya.
In January 2009, a scandal involving then Agriculture Minister William Ruto came into light. Ruto was accused of selling maize imported to supplement local produce. In the same month, Kenyans were shocked by yet another scam, the 708 billion shilling Triton oil scandal. By 2010, as Parliament unearthed a scam involving the then Foreign Affairs Minister Moses Wetangula, Kenyans were already drained. Instead of accepting free property from the Japanese government, Wetangula was accused of withholding 1.6 billion shillings to buy a less suitable property in Tokyo. With all these scandals yet to be conclusively probed, the current government is under much scrutiny on its pending big money projects. Whistleblowers claim that there are already undercurrents in President Uhuru Kenyatta's top projects for his first term. Ashimwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, it seems that not a year goes by without a new scandal, and indeed the chain of corruption in Kenya can be traced back as far as independence. The question then is, why is it becoming increasingly difficult to win the fight against corruption? Well, KTN's Joy Doreen Bira sought some answers.
That 1 in 4 Kenyans paid a bribe last year could explain the laxity in the fight against corruption in the country. But even more, the institutions that deliver services to the masses have come up as the most corrupt in the country. Going by 2013 Transparency International Corruption Index indicated that police, parliament, judiciary, civil service and political parties were the most corrupt of all.
Times in our history we haven't had really the requisite political will to be able to aggressively and conclusively deal with corruption-related issues.
While the results of the fight against graft by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission are yet to be seen, the EACC has been preceded by the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission and the Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority, all that have been criticized for failure to bring to book the perpetrators involved in corruption scandals.
So what happens between the time this person is apprehended in court to the time that case is terminated? We have seen mega corruption cases which have been terminated. Is it because our police, our investigators don't do a thorough job to pin these people down? Is there something wrong in our judicial system whereby people just get scot-free because of lack of evidence? Because we have had some cases, people say, oh, because of lack of evidence, there is no case, you see? When is there going to be a case?
Despite rigorous public vetting of officials to take office as part of the process to ensure those involved in corruption of any sort are eliminated, little appears to have been achieved.
These commissions are established, and then we leave the fight against corruption to them as if none of us have a role, none of us have any responsibility.
So the implementation stage, be it in the government sector, be it in the private sector, be it in schools, be it in any institution, when it comes to the implementation of these policies, structures, and plans, That's where we go wrong.
Recommendations on fighting graft, such as those recommended by former anti-corruption boss Aaron Ringera, seem to have been shelved and to date are yet to be implemented.
The older a matter is, the more difficult it is to investigate, because memories have faded, witnesses have died, documents have disappeared, and so on and so forth.
We have effectively devolved corruption. Number two, that we don't do anything to solve the problem of corruption. Number three, we were very clear in the year 2000 when we said we should abolish provincial administration.
The Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, has time and again urged community members to enhance cooperation among their anti-graft institutions and all law enforcement arms, but still, this is yet to be achieved. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN.
Powerful insights in the failings in the front line on the war on corruption. Now, in other news, the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Professor Jacob Kaimenya, snubbed the National Assembly's Committee on Education investigating the cancellation of examination results. Kaimenya was scheduled to appear before the committee to explain the ranking controversy surrounding Miranda High School, where results for 23 candidates in last year's KCSE results were cancelled. The Cabinet Secretary was accused of holding the committee in contempt.
I expecting the CS to be here today to address these issues. If we create a precedent whereby you invite a CS and refuse to come and you proceed, you will never see that CS in this meeting again. But the way the CS behaves is holding this committee in contempt. I remember one time when he was talking, he was so fidgety. He was talking of, we are wasting time. We are wasting time. I remember he made that remark. And you see, non-attendance of these meetings all through confirms his remark at one time.
I left the CS monitoring the question of the strike that is ongoing.
This committee is requiring that every other time when we require the CS to be here, he must be here. This committee is an equivalent of the High Court of the Republic of Kenya. And I want to say that in the subsequent communication, let the CS note that we want him to be here.
So on the big question tonight, we are focusing on the corruption story that is developing. We are asking you, do you think this latest strategy will succeed in fighting corruption?
That's right. Let us know what you think, and you can do that by texting us on 22155. Begin with a yes or no, and then add a brief comment, or you can tweet us. Our handles are at Katchungera for myself, at Ben_Kitili, and also add at KTN Kenya to that. And of course, we'll be looking at some of your feedback during this program.
So now we are following up on that story about a fire that has broken out in the last few minutes. By the time we were starting this bulletin in Nairobi's Gikomba market, we are still trying to piece together the information that is reaching our newsroom. The latest information we have is that the fire started, the source of the fire was the lower side of the market near the Shauri Moyo Bridge. That is where, from the sources we are getting from our sources on the ground, is that this fire started from the lower side of the market, Gikomba market, that is near the Shauri Moyo Bridge. We are still trying to get the details, still scanty information coming from that area. We are not aware of if the firefighters are on the scene, but we shall be bringing you the details as soon as we get them on this. And the police are at the scene, as we understand, to ward off looters, and the fire brigade is heading to the scene to fight the fire. We are keeping tabs on this new development, and we shall be bringing you the details as we continue to receive them.
The case against embattled former Embu Governor Martin Wambora began today, with his lawyer Paul Muite denying the abusive office charges against his client. Elsewhere, the criminal trial against city lawyer Kathy Kilonzo will proceed. KTN's Winnie Kamau brings us details of these and other stories from the courts.
Together with the supporting affidavits
The criminal trial against city lawyer Kathy Kilonzo will go on. The court ruled despite her plea to have the case dismissed for lack of witness statements requested. Kathy, through her lawyers led by Fred Ojiambo, sought to have more documents and witness statements from the prosecution. The court held the prosecution cannot be forced to supply what they did not rely on during the hearing.
Who is this Wambora who has been so addicted?
And the case facing embattled Embu former Governor Martin Nyaga Wambora began in earnest today with Wambora's lawyer Paul Muite denying abuse of office allegations. Wambora claims the charges of purchasing 3 million shillings worth of maize seeds and the renovation of the stadium were trumped up. The case, which is before a 3-judge bench, resumes tomorrow. Elsewhere, the High Court has halted a criminal case against former Mungiki leader Mainan Njenga pending the hearing and determination of the application before the court. The 2-judge bench, Justices Msaga Mbugoli and Lydia Chode, said that the issue of contention before the court was whether the accused should be represented by senior counsel Paul Muite. Njenga is facing charges of robbery and malicious damage to property. And Mumias Outgrowers Company Limited have sought to have their 3.7 billion shilling claim against the sugar milling company be set down before a hearing before the arbitrator. The farmers, through their lawyer Patrick Luther, had written to the sole arbitrator Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, asking him to invite the parties to set date for the arbitration. And the court this month is set to rule on whether Cabinet Secretary Charity Ngilu disregarded the law by dismissing the Commissioner of Land, Sarah Mwenda, from office without due process. The effect of the dismissal has now led to a snag in the land registry since there is no one to sign the title deeds. This emerged in an industrial court where Mwenda is contesting her dismissal. Winnie Kamau, KTN.
In other news from the counties, Bungoma residents are up in arms over the alleged rise in murder cases. And in Nakuru County, a poacher was killed, this against the backdrop of the declaration of the war on rhino poaching.
Fear gripped the residents of Bungoma Tuesday after the body of a Kenya Power employee was discovered in the forest with the hands in police handcuffs. Human rights officials led by the Western Kenya Human Rights Watch Executive Director George Bonya claimed that the deceased was the 5th person to be killed and dumped in the same forest. Bungoma South OCPD Kirinya Limpitu said the police have launched investigations into the killing. And there was drama in Shirotsa village in Kakamega County after area residents killed a 15-foot python which had swallowed a live goat. The reptile was split open and the goat removed.
Imekuwa ni jambo la kushangaza sana, hata watu wa mji wote wameshangaa sana kwa kuona joka kubwa kama hii. So mimi kwa upande wangu hata ndistuka, lakini kuna venye mmeiona.
Tuwaulize nyinyi wa mama wa Inamoi.
And women parliamentarians have opposed the proposal to scrap special women's seats in a proposed amendment of the constitution. The women slammed those calling for such amendments, saying it shows lack of respect to women. They said the gender threshold provided under the constitution should be maintained as women remain marginalized in politics. The government has been challenged to champion for the amendment of the constitution to enable it to lower the ballooning wage bill. Kinangop woman representative Wanjiko Moher says the number of MPs should be reduced to 47 in a bid to relieve the burden of their salaries on the taxpayer.
Well, next tonight, it's time for business with Bonnie Tunya, who's in our business studio. Now, Bonnie, I know you're going to be talking about new things happening with the postal office. My question is, when is the last time you actually posted a letter, or snail mail, as they call it?
The question is, when is the last time I actually received a letter, because it's been so long. We all went email and all that, but that is coming up in business as well as Stanchet's entry into Islamic banking or Sharia compliant banking. Stay tuned.
Treasury caps foreign borrowing at $1.75 billion in the year ending June 2014.
Good Good evening and welcome to KTN Business. My name is Boni Tunyan. Just before we give you the day's business, we have an update of a fire that has gutted down part of the Gikomba market. It is said that the fire started at the Shauri Moyo Bridge in the Kamukunji region. Efforts are underway to try to put it out. But as we know right now, the fire has gutted out a big part of the Gikomba market. We're talking about the area near Shauri Moyo Bridge all the way to Kamukunji, and we'll be giving you more information. But the pictures on your screen right now regarding that particular market that is up in flames, that is the Gikomba market. More details will be coming your way as and when we get them. Let's go to business now. And the National Treasury has capped foreign borrowing that includes the country's first planned Eurobond at just about $1.75 billion in the fiscal year throughout June of 2014. In a statement contained in the just released debt management paper, Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich says the size of non-concessional borrowing is consistent with a ceiling set under an International Monetary Fund program that ended in January and is meant to safeguard debt sustainability levels. According to the projections, the Eurobond is expected to push Kenya's total debt to 53.3% of gross domestic product by June from 51.8% at the end of December 2013. Additionally, the paper says government debt repayments are expected to surge to almost 700 billion shillings in 2015 from about 120 billion shillings this year, as short-term government securities sold in the year through June are redeemed. Right, away from matters of austerity and saving the country and debt management, Postal Corporation of Kenya is reinventing itself to remain relevant to the modern communication industry. Here is KTN's Philip Keitani with that report.
Postal business in Kenya is struggling to stay afloat. In fact, some people had written obituaries for the postal services. Technology has been accused of sending the postal services to an early grave, even with attempts to prop it up. Little gains have been realized.
It is with this in mind that we are trying to sensitize the consumers, particularly, if they have to use the operators that are not licensed, then it becomes very difficult to guarantee the security of their parcels.
According to the Communication Commission of Kenya, in the first quarter of the financial year 2013-2014, the total number of letters sent locally increased by 26.9% to reach 16.8 million letters, up from 13.2 million recorded during the previous period. This, it added, was due to dispatch of success cards during the national exams. But those in charge of the once popular snail mail say they are repackaging to match competition.
When it comes to parcels and courier, that is a segment that is very open to competition, and that is the area we were just talking about. Improvements have been seen.
Additionally, the corporation says it will soon be coming up with cool services to appeal and attract to younger generations. This, it says, will see it take services to places frequented by most young people like malls, as well as within residential areas.
These are business people who have premises that are frequented by their customers who we think can also be us. So that's how we are now targeting that.
But the hit on the postal services is expected to continue as new technologies which are safer, faster and seen as cool by the younger generation continue to be launched around the globe. Philip Keitani, KTN Business.
We stay with matters communication, and the chief executive officers from 7 major mobile operator groups in Africa are pushing to make infrastructure sharing a requirement, making it easier for mobile broadband and internet access. But can the same be replicated in Kenya? KTN's Michael Karanja has all the answers.
Kenya has witnessed a mobile and internet boom over the last decade and a half. The country now boasts one of the most robust mobile and IT networks on the continent. The country, however, lacks a national policy on infrastructure sharing that has seen most operators go it alone or enter into exclusive partnerships that are sometimes discarded midstream. Led by Bharti Airtel, 7 mobile operators including Etisalat, MTN, Zain, Vodafone, Orange and the Ooredoo Group the operators plan to cooperate on the network infrastructure sharing initiatives that recognize the profound impact of mobile broadband and internet services on the citizens of both regions. The GSMA maintains that telecom regulatory frameworks should encourage flexible commercial sharing agreements and facilitate access to government-owned assets at preferential rates to help speed up the rollout of networks and support the business case to extend mobile networks into rural areas. Things in Kenya, however, tend to work in a different direction, with most players going it alone. Players put up their own base station for mobile coverage and also lay their own fiber optic infrastructure to capture the lucrative data market. In 2012, Safaricom and Airtel entered into a rare joint venture in the laying of a multi-million shilling fiber network to cut their reliance on third parties for wholesale internet and share the cost of building the inland network. With the local mobile market poised for consolidation, it will be interesting to see whether the operators will be more interested in sharing their own infrastructure. Michael Karanja, KTN.
A new dawn is emerging in the world of computers as machines transform from being placid conductors of information to becoming active participants in learning and development of solutions to aid mankind. The age of supercomputers is finally here, as Adel Changole reports.
Computers that had stored programs, and those stored programs were able to transform the world of information. They were able to process in a very defined and a very flexible way information. And yet at the same time, those systems were limited. They had all the problems that we've become aware of aging and legacy software. They had a brittleness, and they didn't have an adaptivity to deal with the changes that are going on in the world and problems as they emerged.
This could be the biggest innovation yet in the evolution of the modern-day computer. From fast-performing basic processes to becoming programmed to run advanced applications and now to enable them to be taught and analyze data. Dubbed cognitive computing, the IBM RAN system not only understands the complexity of normal human lingo, it can also learn, adapt, and change depending on the data presented.
It's going to make it simpler for people to use computers and solve some of the problems they have.
The system, which the firm is calling Project Lucy, seeks to fuel development and spur business opportunities in Africa. IBM will invest 8.7 billion shillings over the next 10 years in the initiative to unlock Africa's potential.
We should even at this moment measure the inflation in Kenya today, because people have cell phones, people buy stuff. We should be able to measure it. We haven't done it yet. We're not yet there to do it. Even GDP, amazing discrepancies. Teachers in school, we don't know. Is the teacher in school now?
Discover the relationship between water and disease, or the relationship between water and agriculture. Perhaps we'll better understand the relationships between energy and traffic and congestion and loss of efficiency because of the congestion that we have on our roads. Or we'll understand the relationship between financial inclusion and does it actually create jobs? We'll begin to understand these things.
IBM will host the system in Kenya, making the country Africa's cognitive hub. Which is ironic, given that just last week, a State Department was in the market seeking typewriters.
If you saw in social media, it embarrassed Kenya, which is known as the hub of ICT. It embarrassed us, the whole world. I hope they drop the tender.
Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Right, finally, just before the numbers, we know StanChat has plunged into the Islamic banking space. More details of that you can read on our website, standardmedia.co.ke. Very quickly, let's take a look at the numbers and how your money is working for you coming up next. So that's how your business looks like on the day that Kakuzi was the biggest gainer, moving up 9% at a price of 120. More numbers coming up tomorrow. My name is Bonnie Tunya. Back to Nancy.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Now let's go to a recap of our top story, where police in Mombasa discovered and disarmed 6 heavy bombs from a car in the town centre. Bomb experts discovered the pipe bombs, and they were tucked within the seats and dashboard of an SUV, all set up and ready for detonation. The police are holding 2 men in connection with the discovery, one a Kenyan and the other a Somali national. Key installations are now under tight security and police patrols heightened in the county.
KTN Business in association with
Safaricom Business.
Gisort na Samsung Galaxy S3 Lite for 5,000 bonga points and 6,999 shillings. Available at all Safaricom shops countrywide.
So tonight we are reporting that the President has ordered the AG, the Treasury and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to make sure they formulate a policy on the fight against corruption by the end of the year. And on the big question we are asking you, do you think this latest strategy will succeed in fighting corruption? And very quickly, Elvis Moga from Migori says no, unless a lot of seriousness is directed to this, it will not bring any change. I mean, we have seen many government-initiated programs which end up giving false hopes.
Well, Ben, yes, is a little bit hard to come by today, but there's one here from Circoech who says the new strategic plan to curb corruption is actually a step in the right direction. However, the important thing is implementation.
Another no here, Nancy from Paul in Mombasa says no, the president himself is escalating corruption by transferring same corrupt officials to other areas. Please, we want sackings, not transfers.
Right, one more here from Evans Opakasi who says the strategy cannot yield any positive effect simply because it's drafted by the same corrupt fellows.
I have another one. Yes, but let the AG and the Chief Justice look into the case where lawyers and other business people stole money from the Ministry of Lands. That is anonymous. Keep those texts coming. The number is 22155 on Twitter as well, at Kachungira, at KTN Kenya, and at Ben_Kitili. Time now, take a look at what's happening in the world of sports. Nicholas Mudimba is in the sports studio. Nick, what is the latest in the world of sports?
Of course, Ben, I know what's in your mind right now. It's another Champions League night, but that's a story for another time. Tonight, we have the Junior Tennis Championships update, and tomorrow, KRU is having the elections. We'll keep you updated. Stay tuned to KTN Sports. Time now for sports. I am Nicholas Mudimba. We begin with tennis, where Kenya's Kevin Cheruiyot was knocked out of the Africa Junior Tennis Championships by Tanzania's Meshak Tumaini at the Parkland Sports Club. Kenya has not been doing well in the recent international competitions, some which coach Rosemary Owino blames on lack of exposure. She feels Kenyan players are not mentally organized to compete at the highest level compared to their colleagues from Northern and Southern Africa.
Kenya's hopes in the boys singles on the young shoulders of Kevin Cheruiyot. And after dismissing hard-hitting Nigeria's Michael, he had set his eyes on the semi-finals of the 37th edition of the Africa Junior Championships. He began well, taking a lead of 3-1 as the Tanzanian champion seemed to slow at the net and his serves. Cheruiyot won the first set 6-2. Buoyed by a partisan crowd at Parkland Sports Club, Cheruiyot seemed to fizzle off as his backhand and the clay court failed him against the 7th-seeded Meshak Tumaini, who quickly adapted to the clay court despite the first set's loss. He took the second set 6-4 before wrapping up the match with a 6-2 win. Cheruiyot attributes his elimination to inexperience as well as being disoriented by the umpire's calls that left him out of sorts.
I didn't have enough control. Yeah, so and my balls are not going in so far, so that was the problem that I was.
Kwa kuwa haya mashindano sio mara ya kwanza kucheza, mashindano haya natakiwa nifanye vizuri zaidi, na imani kuwa nitafika finali.
the national head coach believes the Kenyan team have competed well in the tournament.
If we can get a couple of companies working with the federation to try and give some of these players a little bit more exposure, try and get them together to travel for the major tournaments, even if not in Europe, but at least in Africa.
In other results, Tonya Kubali lost to Al Hussein Lamis of Egypt 6-2 and 6-love in the under-16 category. In the under-14 category, Vanessa Egesa fell to Zimbabwe's Beverly Matsiwa 6-love and 6-love. Isaiah Italy had no chance against experienced Burundian Ernest Abiambere, who won 6-3 and 6-1 as Kenyan players had a bad day in office today. Hassan Juma, KTN Sports Today.
Tomatoes rugby now. Philip Jalango, whose relations with the Kenya Rugby Union Board has not been rosy, could join the union's top brass if he convinces voters to elect him as vice chairman. The union goes to the polls tomorrow. Chairman Mwangi Muthee and Treasurer Gabriel Ouko are unopposed in the election. Sasha Mutai will skate out with Philip Jalango in the vice chairman's position. Performance by the national rugby squads will be key on Wednesday when the union effects new office bearers. Of course, the sevens team, and of particular interest is the team's performance in the IRB series this season, could be used against the current leadership. For the first time ever, the 15th rugby team is being paid the allowances, with the sevens players getting strong technical benches, though the results from Poll True is not impressive so far. Chairman Mwangi Muthee and Treasurer Gabriel Ouko will be unopposed. Vice Chairman Sasha Mutai will be challenged by a former director in charge of national squads and a lead performance, Philip Jalango. Eddie Omondi will be vying for the position of secretary against Ochieng Ahaya of Masinde Muliro University, a position that was previously held by Jack Okoth, who is now the current CEO. Penina Wahome, Dennis Sombui, Moses Ndale will all be gunning for director seats. Chairman Mwangi Muthee is still serving his term, having been elected just last year, while Ouko will be unopposed and assured of retaining the posts in the executive. Nicholas Mudimba, KTN Sports. Photographs of the bloody scene at the house of Oscar Pistorius was shown to the court at the South African Olympic athletes trial in Pretoria. His defense team said the police crime scene photographer failed to label his pictures correctly, which he denies. Pistorius denies murdering his girlfriend Riva Steckamp last year, saying she thought she was an intruder. The prosecution says he intentionally shot the model after an argument at his house on Valentine's Day last year. Photographer Benny Van Staden was being cross-examined for the second day by defense lawyer. The defense team says the images indicate that evidence was moved around in violation of the procedure during the investigation of the killing.
There is paginated page number 7, the right-hand corner. Clear.
Around that sports, I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Join Hassan tomorrow in the Morning Express for more details on the sporting world. Have a good night.
Well, as we wrap up this night's bulletin, let's revisit our big question. As we showed you earlier, some new strategies are being rolled out to curb corruption, and we wanted to find out from you whether you think they're going to work.
And this is the poll. 79% of you think no, and only 21% seem to agree with that. So majority of Kenyans, according to this poll, do not have any confidence in the system. I have a text here from it's anonymous. It says no, corruption will never end in Kenya because we always elect leaders and civil workers who have no fear of God in their heart. That is just another way of wasting Kenya's tax money. That is actually Augustus Mulyongi from Mombasa.
All right, John Miner says no. The fight against corruption will be won when all of us take the responsibility, not just leaving it to EACC.
Francisco Kalu from Kilifi says no, this is because the majority of those who have been given the responsibility to formulate the policy are the main beneficiaries of corruption.
Well, thank you very, very much for your responses this evening and for taking time to be with us on KTN Prime. I'm Nancy Kachingira. Our sign language interpreter this evening was William Silla. It's good night for now.
Thank you for joining us on the program tonight. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from the Standard Group Center.